Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Stitch Sessions. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Karen and I love all things to do with crafting with crochet. If you're not new here, welcome back. I'm always so happy to have you guys here and hang out with you for another crochet adventure. So, we're staying in the theme of the holidays and doing some Christmas crochet projects. If you have not seen my Christmas crochet tour, I will make sure to leave a link for it in the description box down below. A lot of the items that we're going to make over the next couple of weeks, I showed you all a sneak peek in that tour. So this week, we are actually going to work on the Christmas runner. Now, you actually can use this any time of year, but I just like the idea of using this crochet thread to create something really pretty and dainty and lacy. And again, I'm into the Victorian Christmas theme, so this lacy runner lends itself perfectly for that. It is a 4-row repeat, but don't let that scare you. It's pretty much using single crochets, double crochets, and then we add the star stitch in there. Now, if you haven't done the star stitch before, do not fret. I take you through it step by step, but I also do have a separate tutorial on the star stitch that you can look at separately if you like. And of course, I'll leave a link for that in the description box down below. So without further ado, why don't we just check out the things we're going to need to start making up our runner, and let's get stitching up our Christmas table runner. Okay, so let's dive in and talk right about the yarn we're going to use for this project. It's actually crochet thread. Now, this was gifted to me by my brother. He knew someone whose wife had done lots of crocheting, and she had all of this crochet thread, and I was lucky enough to be gifted this. This is quite expensive. It does come from Europe. It's Portuguese made. It is 100% mercerized cotton. The company is Limol, if you're ever interested. And it comes in 100 grams, and the sizing is known as PT8 or ES6,5. I would say this is comparable to Aunt Lydia's crochet thread and probably the size 10, or if there is a higher size, because it is much thinner than the size 3, so you can see that there. So it's definitely not really a yarn, it is a thread, and this is quite common for those of you that come from European backgrounds. If you ever went to your grandmother's house or your aunt's home and you saw crochet doilies anywhere on a surface, more than likely it was made with crochet thread. So since I'm making a runner, I thought this would be the perfect project for this yarn. So I have, I'm starting off with 2 of these balls, and it doesn't really say what the yardage is, although it does say 435 MT. Oh, that might be meters. It might be meters. If somebody knows for sure and can correct me, let me know. So I have 2 of these on hand. We'll see how much I need. And because it's a thread, a lot of times people would go for a very, very fine hook. But because I want my stitches to sit loosely and look very, very lacy and relaxed, for this project, I'm actually going to use a 4mm hook. It's also known as a G or a size 6. And some people, especially those of you that are connoisseurs of using crochet thread, might think that that is crazy and may think that that is quite large for the thread. However, I have already been experimenting with it, and not at all. I totally feel very confident using this hook for the effect I'm looking for. So if you've ever seen European crochet doilies where they're crocheted very, very tightly, then of course you're going to use one of those fine hooks. Sometimes they're even known as a 1mm. I think there's even less than a 1mm. Like, that's how small these hooks can get. I do not have that kind of patience, nor do I have the eyes for that anymore. So I'm going to go with this hook size. And I think once you start seeing the project evolve, you'll kind of see where I'm going with it. So that is my hook. Make sure you have a pair of scissors and a yarn needle to sew in any ends. Some of you might want to use a thread needle. You can, but I still like using a yarn needle. It's got a big enough eye I can see, and I just find it just slides through so nicely for sewing in our ends. So let's begin. Okay, so because I'm using a white yarn and I have a white background, I just changed my background so that it created a contrast there. So we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook here. And we're going to start off by chaining 60, and this is going to give us the width of our runner. Okay, so we're just going to yarn over and chain. Now be careful not to chain too tightly because thread will be a lot trickier to push your hook through if it's chained up too tightly. So you can see I'm nice and relaxed here. So chain up 60. Okay, so I have chained 60, and you can see my chains are very relaxed. And now what we're going to do is we are going to find the second chain from our hook. Remember, we never count the loop that's on the hook. So I have 1 and 2, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my hook and place a single crochet. So this is row number 1, and that's all we're going to do. You're going to continue inserting your hook and placing 1 single crochet into each and every chain. And at the end of row number 1, you should have 59 stitches. And we want an odd number of stitches for the star stitch, which we will be doing in a little bit. So continue on and place 1 stitch into each chain, and I'll meet you at the end of round number 1. Okay, so I've completed row number 1, and if you can get to the end of row 1, this is the hardest part of this pattern, even though you might look at the star stitch and feel it's a little bit daunting. The reason why this first row is the hardest is if you accidentally chained one of your chains too tightly, getting your hook into it and keeping your single crochets consistent is very challenging. So if you can do that, so see, even though my chains were pretty relaxed, I still feel like it's not as consistent as I would like it. But as long as you have 59 stitches, yay for you. You've gotten through the hardest part. Anytime you work with crochet thread, it's just a little bit less predictable. There's not as much structure as, let's say, a wool or acrylic yarn. So let's go on to row number 2. And we're going to begin by chaining 3. 1, 2, and 3. You'll turn your work. And for row number 2, we're simply going to place 1 double crochet into each stitch. So we don't work into the very first stitch there because that is the base of our chain 3, and that our chain 3 will count as a stitch. So you're just going to yarn over, and into the next stitch you're going to double crochet. So it should be a little bit easier now because you've got actual stitches to work into instead of chains. So we're going to go into there. I'll do another one into the next stitch there. So pretty straightforward. Row number 2 is just 1 double crochet into each stitch. And that is, so that's sitting much looser than it would be if you used a smaller hook. And that is exactly what I'm going for. So you know what to do. Do 1 into each stitch to the end of your row. Don't forget that turning chain, remember we went into the second chain from the hook. That is where you're going to place your last stitch. Okay, it can get pretty tricky to see. If you get to the end and you go, oh, that looks like it's done, just make sure to count back. If you only have 58 stitches, it means you still need to find that chain 2, that turning chain there, right there, and place your last double crochet in there. You need to maintain 59 stitches. I've now completed a row number 2, and my work looks like this, okay? So we're gonna go on to row number 3, which is the beginning now of our star stitch. So we want to always begin by chaining 3. 1, 2, 3. We're gonna turn our work. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna find the second chain from the hook. We do not count that one. And we're going to insert our hook into that chain to pull up a loop. And then we're going to go into the last chain just below that. And we're going to insert our hook and also pull up another loop. Okay, so you currently have 3 loops on the hook. When creating the star stitch, you always want to have 6 loops. So we know we're not done yet. So then we're going to go into the very first stitch right here because this is the base of that chain through. We are going to work into that stitch. So you're going to insert there, pull up a loop, and now you're going to go into the next 2 stitches and pull up a loop. So you have 1 and you have 2. Okay, so you have 2, 4, 6 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 6 of those loops, just like that. And then you're going to chain 1. Now be careful there not to chain too tightly because that is the eye of our star stitch. So there we have it. Now one thing that's important to understand is that you've chained 1. So when you pull through all 6 of those loops, you created a stitch, right? There's the chain, there's the stitch, and then there is the chain from your eye, okay? And then you've also got the top of your chain 3. So there is that part of that first stitch there, because remember, we've got 1, 2, and 3 stitches that have been worked. So may not look like much just yet, but just keep that in mind when we come to the end of row number 4. It might be too soon for me to talk about it, but I just wanted you to be aware that that first chain, remember we skipped to the second chain from the hook, that first chain is going to matter. So usually the first star stitch is always a little tricky to form. Now it should be a little easier with every star stitch after this. So what we're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into the eye. See how it's starting to get too tight? You want to be careful there. So I'm going to insert to pull up a loop. So now I have 2 loops on the hook. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in between that last leg there. See how all the legs of the star is kind of spreading out? I'm going to go in between to pull up my 3rd loop. And then I'm going to work into the last stitch that was worked to pull up my next loop. So that's 4. And now I need to go into each of the next 2 stitches. So I'm going to pull up the 5th loop and I'm going to pull up the 6th loop. 6 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Okay. Just like that. And now I'm going to chain 1, okay? And it just creates that eye there that we need. And that is our star stitch. So the stars all kind of overlap. I don't know if you can see that. So the legs of this one kind of overlap into a few of the previous ones. So let's do that again. So each of these stars takes 2 stitches. You've got 1 and 2. So we always insert first into the eye of the star you just created, and then you're going to go into or beside the last leg created right there to pull up your 3rd loop. Then you go into the last stitch worked to pull up the 4th, and then the next 2. So you've got your 5th loop and you've got your 6th loop. Make sure to double check that. Yarn over and pull through all 6 and chain 1. Okay, so this whole project, especially because we're using a larger hook for this thread, it's really important to keep it relaxed because you don't want the consistency of your work to deviate at all. You want them to stay nice and even. So that's it for round number 3. Sorry, row. If I said round before, we're working in rows. So we're just going to go to the end, create all of our star stitches. I'm going to meet you at the end here because you will have 1 stitch left when you've finished your last star. Okay, so I've just come to the last stitch here, which is the top of my chain 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place a half double crochet stitch into that last stitch. So I'll insert my hook right at the top of the chain 3 and pull through, whoops, and then pull through all of them. And that is how I'm going to finish my row number 3. Okay, let's move on to row number 4, the final row of our repeat. So for row number 4, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. And right into this very first stitch here, we're going to place a half double crochet into that stitch. Just like that. Okay. Next, we are going to work into the eye of the star, and that is what we're going to do for the rest of row number 4. So you can see the eye of that star there and there and there. So this is the back now, the back side of the first part of the star. So into each eye, we're now going to place 2 half double crochet stitches, except for the first one. Into the first one, we are always only going to place 1. And that is what helps us keep our stitch count nice and even. So you've got a half double crochet at the beginning and a half double crochet into that first eye. We then go into the next eye and we place 2 half double crochet stitches. And again, we don't want to stitch too tightly, so there's 1. And then we go back into that same stitch and do the second one, just like that. Okay, so you can see that now they fan out and they look like a star. Actually, once we turn it over this way, see, there you go. Now you can see it's starting to look, it's actually, I'll do a few more because it's harder when you only see the first 2. So into the next eye, so we skip this stitch entirely, always go into the eyes of the star. So we go into there and we place, whoops, very slippery. We place 2 half double crochets, 1, and then back into the same stitch we have 2, okay? And again into the next eye, which is right there, we have 1, and we have 2. Okay, so you can kind of see the star. Now if I turn it over, this is going to be the front of our work. There you go. You can now see the full star is complete. And I love how the single crochet row and the double crochet row just create this lovely kind of border for the star stitch. Okay, that is what we're going to do now for the rest of row number 4. 2 half double crochets into the eye of every star. And then I'm going to meet up with you at the end just to take you through how to finish off your row. So row number 4 will be complete, and then our repeat will be complete. And then you can create the length that you desire for your runners. So let's just finish this row and we'll meet back up here in a moment. Okay, so I'm at the end of row number 4 and I've just done my 2 half double crochets into the last eye there. So I have 56 stitches, okay, because 2 into each of the stars that I have here, because I have 28 stars. So I have 56 stitches plus 1 that I did at the beginning here. I did that first half double crochet, so that's 57. And then I have 2 stitches left here. Now, so remember we had that the first leg here that created a stitch and then the top of the chain 3. Now some people will end this round or this row by actually placing 2 half double crochet stitches so that your stitch count stays perfectly even, which makes total sense. The only problem is with the star stitch, sometimes that creates your edges not to stay relatively straight. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to place 1 half double crochet at the very top of that chain 3. And I know you might think, well, how does that solve the problem? It just seems to sit much better. And I've experimented this in many different ways. And for this particular project in particular, it just seems to work. I keep it nice and loose. And then I just half double crochet. And my edge is just able to stay a little bit straighter. And it just creates a nice even edge at the end of that star stitch. Okay, so when I turn my work now, my full star stitch is complete and my 4th row is done. And you can see it just sits nice, fairly flush. So this would now be your repeat. You would just go back and repeat row 1, 2, 3, and 4, and keep repeating 1, 2, 3, 4 until you get the desired length of your runner. So I'm just going to quickly, I'm just going to start again row number 1 for you. So that's our single crochet row. So at the end here, what we would do is we would chain 1, turn our work, and then right back into that very first stitch, we're just going to single crochet. And this is where you can experiment to see if that 1 half double crochet or the 2 half double crochets at the end will work for you. Because again, it will also depend on stitch gauge. If you're a tighter crocheter, you're going to need those 2 half double crochets. So, and then you would just go 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way across. Okay, so you will end up with 58 stitches actually. Okay, so you just do a few. I always like to show this side of things because it's never a perfect scenario. So I'm going to do a few more of these. And then I would just kind of lay my work down and see how I feel about the edge there. So this got cinched in a little bit when we were creating our initial star stitch. So that's why sometimes that'll happen there. So I'm pretty okay with that. We will do another finishing at the very, very end. We are going to do a finishing round. So if this just kind of is a little bit bumpy, I'm not too worried about it. So yeah, I feel good about that. If you found that yours went in a bit, then I would place 2 single crochets just to make sure that your edge is nice and even. So there I go. I'm starting to repeat row number 1 again. Now I am going to continue to work my length for a total of 281 rows, actually 282. So what I'm doing is I'm repeating row 1, 2, 3, and 4 70 times. So that's going to give me a total of 280 rows. And then I'm going to repeat row 1 and 2 at the very end to create a nice little edging. So that's going to give me 282 rows. Now that is the goal right now. As I create some length, I'm going to go and place it on the piece of furniture I'm making this runner for. And that is always what I recommend you do. Because of course, as we crochet, things may relax a little bit, things may tighten a little bit, so you may need less rows or more rows than you anticipated. So that is the plan for me. And so you're going to press pause, you're going to leave this video probably for a long time. You're going to busy yourself creating the length, and then you're going to meet up with me once you've got the length of your runner, and then we're going to compare notes, and then we will finish off our runner. So I will see you back here in a little while. Okay, so I have done my repeat a total of 34 times. Okay, so I actually have a total of 138 stitches because remember we had 2 extra rows at the beginning here. So this is how the texture is coming out, which is really pretty. And so yes, so my length is a total of 34 inches in length, which is 86.5 centimeters. So I've decided to stop my length here, and I'm just coming up to the end of one of these spools. So I will have to go into a second one to create the border. Of course, as always, you can make yours super long. I initially intended to make mine longer, but then based on what I'm going to do with it for my Christmas display, this length will serve me just fine. So now what we're going to do is we are going to create a border. So you can see here the raw edge of the runner looks like this, and I'm not a huge fan of it. It's still a little bit bumpy, and that's why a nice border will just finish it off very nicely. So that is what we're going to do next. So once you've completed your final row, and that is the double crochet row, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and we are going to turn our work. So now what we're going to do is we are going to create a border using the puffed shell stitch. Okay, so right away what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over. We're going to insert our hook right back into the base of that chain. So this chain is really just here to give us height. It's not really going to count as anything. So we're going to insert our hook and pull up a loop. You want to stretch it just as high as that chain 3 is. Then you're going to yarn over. I like to kind of secure it here with my finger. Insert back into that same stitch and pull up a loop again, stretch it up, yarn over, secure, and do it one more time. So we will go back in here 3 times in total. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops on your hook. You're now going to yarn over, pull through the first 6 loops just like that, and now you're going to chain 1. And that is your first little puff stitch, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1, which will be a chain 1 on its own. The previous chain 1 is part of the puff. And you're going to go back into the same stitch. We're going to do the same thing all over again. You're going to yarn over, insert, pull up a loop once, yarn over, insert, pull up a loop twice, yarn over, insert, pull up a loop 3 times. We've got 7 loops all together. Yarn over, pull through the first 6 loops only, and then close it off by pulling through like a chain. Okay, so right now, looks like you have a little puffed V stitch. We are going to chain 1, and we're going to do this one more time into the same stitch. So we're going to do this 3 times in total. This will be a partial shell, okay? So you're going to yarn over, insert once, then twice, and 3 times. And then again, yarn over, pull through the first 6, and then yarn over and close off your stitch. So there you have a puff stitch shell or partial shell, or actually some people would call this a fan because we're going to do this 5 times in total normally. Because we're in the corner, we're only going to do it 3 times. So now what will happen is you're going to skip the next 2 stitches. So you skip 1 and 2, and into that 3rd stitch, we're going to single crochet. Just like that. See, so now it creates that little arch there. So it basically secures the base of our fans all the time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and into the 3rd, we're going to create a full puff stitch shell or fan stitch. So you're going to yarn over, insert, pull up once, pull up twice, pull up 3 times. So you know the drill now. Pull through the first 6 and then close it off by pulling through. We're always going to chain 1 between each puff stitch, yarn over, and repeat. Okay, so this is the 2nd puff stitch. So this part is going to use up a lot of your yarn. And then we're going to chain one. And we're going to repeat that again. So you always chain one and then puff. We're going to do it until you have a total of 5 puff stitch into the same stitch. Okay, so I've just completed my 5th puff stitch. So now you can see that it really is fanning out just like that. And to anchor the other side, we're now going to skip the next 2 stitches. And into the 3rd, we're going to single crochet. Just like that. So now you can see that it's anchored on both sides and it really does create that beautiful little fan shape. And that is what we're going to do all the way across. So you're going to work through all of your stitches until you get to the corner here. And then we're going to make our way around the corner and we'll work down the side of your work. And that's where it might get a little bit tricky because as you can see on the raw edge, it has a little bit of bumpiness to it. But for now, I'm going to set you loose to finish off doing your puff stitch fans all the way down your straight side, we'll call it. And then I'm going to meet up with you once we get to the corner to come around the bend and show you how to work down the side of your runner. Okay, so I have finished my row across, so it's looking like that. It's so pretty. See how those puff stitches are working out? Okay, so I've now come to the end of my row and I've got 2 stitches left. Okay, so we are not going to worry about having to skip 2. What we're going to do is we are going to work into the last stitch there. So I'm just going to use that little space there. So we are going to create a full shell here. So at the beginning we started and only did 3. So here we're going to do all 5, which is going to help us go around the bend there. So we just yarn over, insert, we just do our typical puff stitch fan there. Pull through and pull through, chain 1. And we're going to do this a total of 5 times, just like you've been doing before. Okay, and here is my last puff stitch. So you can see it actually naturally bends around the way there. So now we are going to work along the side of our runner here. So the stitches are not going to be as clearly defined. So you're going to have to really eyeball it a little bit. So we want to do our single crochet next. So I'm going to aim into this space right here, which is basically 2 rows down. So I'm going to aim into that space there and I'm going to single crochet. And so then I'm just going to stand back and see, just going to tighten that a bit, if that works nicely. As long as it doesn't bunch or buckle, then that spacing was pretty good. So we're going to have a shell that goes right around the corner there, okay? So now we want to find a space that's equivalent of skipping 2 chains or 2 stitches like we did before and working into the 3rd one. So this was a chain 3 right here, but it's very, very tight. We've got this little space here, and then we've got, this is kind of the top of our single crochet row. So I'm going to aim to work into that one. And I'm going to do my typical puff stitch fan. So these first few coming out of the corner, maybe a little trial and error till you find what works for you. The main thing is you want to stop after every shell, or fan I should say, and just put your work down and just make sure that it lays nice and flat and it doesn't bunch or buckle. And as long as it doesn't do that, you are good to go. So I'm just going to keep going here. So I've done 3, so I need to do 2 more. Puff stitch. So use a lot of yarn at this point, or thread in this case. So 2nd and 3rd. Okay, so I actually am liking that. It's not pulling, so this is really important. You don't want it to pull the other one and make it bunch. And so now we want to go into the equivalent of skipping 2 stitches, and we want to single crochet. So I can see where this stitch is kind of laying naturally here. So I'm going to insert my hook right about there. I always want to have at least 2 loops that I go under, just so that there's some sustenance there. And I'm going to single crochet. Okay, and then I kind of put that down, and actually it's sitting very nicely, and that shell sits nicely in the corner. So that is basically how you're going to work down this side. So it's definitely a rough edge for sure, but you're just going to have to keep eyeballing it and go with what you like to see visually for your project. So I'm going to go right there, and I'm going to do the next fan. Okay, so that's pretty much what you're going to keep doing all the way down. And then by the time you get down here, you want to try and create a fan into this first stitch here, okay? And then you're going to work along here, which is stitches, so it'll be a little bit more straightforward. Then you have a fan here, and then you go along the raw edge all the way until you come back to the beginning there, okay? So you're going to be doing some puff stitch shells for a little while, so I'll see you in a bit. Okay guys, so I just wanted to come on here real quick to show you that this may happen to you, and I just wanted to kind of talk you through what to do. So the goal here is to have a fan kind of round out the corner. Now in this instance, what's happened here is I did a fan, but really the only thing I have left to do is just place that single crochet, okay? So that would mean that then we have to come around the corner and start our next fan here. However, I'm going to show you a little cheat, and that is just to ignore the rule. So because I want this corner and all the corners to actually do this, this is what I'm going to do to kind of create it for myself. Now you don't have to, you can go around the bend and keep that corner more pronounced, but this is just a me thing. I like to keep things pretty uniform. So I'm actually, where I just single crocheted, I am actually just going to create my puff stitch right in the same stitch. So see how I pulled that up like that? So I'm just going to insert and create my puff stitch shell as I normally would do, but I'm going to do it into the same stitch I just single crocheted. So there's 1, chain 1. Now it is going to stretch a bit, don't panic, okay? So I'm going to keep doing this until I have my 5. Okay, so I've finished my shell as usual, and now all I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches as usual and into the 3rd. That's just the tail there. I'm going to single crochet, and that has solved the little issue there. Okay, so it still creates a nice little rounded corner, and then I can continue on. So just in case you come across this, it might not necessarily work out evenly, because remember here we're working into the side of your work. And so that's a quick little fix. And now I'm just going to continue on. This is the bottom side, so now I have stitches to work into. And then hopefully it'll work out on this side. I continue through, and then I go back up the long side until we've completed our border, and we will slip stitch at the end and be done. So just wanted to hop on and show you that, and I'll be back when I've completed my runner. Okay, so I've finished my border. Look at how pretty that looks. Just love that scalloped edging. So I am going to add one more round here just for a little final touch, and that is just single crochets all the way around. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. Okay, so I've slip stitched to join at the end. And by the way, I'm just going to take this out here for a second. So remember at the very beginning when we only did 3 of these puffs? Well, I came in at the end and did the other 2 so that you're joining perfectly in the corner here. Okay, so then when we came to the end, we just slip stitched to the top of that first puff to join. And there you go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now for our final round, I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to go back into that space, single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to go into the space here and I'm going to single crochet. Just like that. Then I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go into the next space here and I'm going to single crochet. So see, it's just giving it a little extra something. And then I'm going to chain 3 again, 2, 3. And now I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that single crochet where we anchored the shell. Okay, then chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Find the first chain space, single crochet. 1, 2, 3. Next chain space, single crochet. And this is basically it. So you're always going to chain 3, single crochet into the chain space, and repeat. And then anytime you come to the single crochet, whoops, I've got one more space there. I'm going to single crochet, then 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to slip stitch. So you still are following the same shape, the scallop shape. See, so that just elevates. Look at how pretty that looks. So it takes those shells, the puff stitch shells, and it just elevates them. It's a lot more flower-like. And that's it, okay? So now that's all I'm gonna do for the rest of my round, and then our Christmas table runner will be complete. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish mine, and then come back here shortly to show you the final reveal. Here we are, guys. I've finally finished the runner, and I'm really excited at how the just those little chain stitches have really accentuated the little puff stitch shells at the end. They really look like little flowers. So you can just see the detail there. And there you have it. So this is ready to go on my Christmas shelf or Christmas mantle, actually. I'm still debating where I'm going to place it in my house this year for some of my Christmas displays. Now, obviously, you can use this for any time of year, but I plan on using this for my Christmas displays, whether it's going to be on one of my side tables or on my pretend mantle, as you guys know if you've seen my crochet Christmas tour. And there you have it. So I hope you found it pretty straightforward. I know working with super fine weight yarn can be a little bit challenging if kind of don't have the patience for it, which I don't usually, but I am very happy that I stuck it out with this project and created this lovely, very dainty project. And now I've got something I can use year over year. Now, as always, if you have any further questions about this project or any project actually, make sure to leave it for me in the comment box down below. And as always, you guys know you can reach me directly by emailing me at info@crochetcrafty.com. I know a lot of you actually do like to email me directly, and I'm always very happy to answer any questions that you may have. And as always, I'm on the socials, so feel free to reach out to me there, share some of the pictures of your projects with me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at The Stitch Sessions. And if you're new here and you have enjoyed working on this project with us and want to hang out with us more often, make sure to click that subscribe button. Come join me every Wednesday morning when I upload a brand new tutorial. And if you found this tutorial very useful and feel that you know someone else that may find it useful, please feel free to share it with your friends. Thank you as always for continuing to support my crochet journey, for liking, subscribing, sharing, donating through the thanks button. Everything helps me to create better tutorials for you. And also when you press that like button, it helps me to know that you like this type of project. And I'll make sure to keep including these types of projects for you in future tutorials. So in the meantime, I wish you happy holidays, happy crocheting, have fun working on all of your holiday projects, and take good care of yourselves as always. And I look forward to seeing you guys in next week's session. Bye-bye.